Seraphina Vale and Dorian Crest were the perfect couple, until the truth shattered the illusion. She was the devoted wife, the soon-to-be mother, the woman who had stood by his side as he built his billion-dollar empire. He was the charming, ruthless businessman who had it all: power, wealth, and a secret life hidden behind closed doors. But when Seraphina uncovered his ultimate betrayal, she didn't just walk away. She did something no one saw coming. She destroyed his empire and built one even greater. Seraphina Vale's life was the kind that most people only dreamed of. She had the mansion, the designer wardrobe, the exclusive invitations to high society events, and a husband who was both powerful and devastatingly handsome. Dorian Crest was not just wealthy. He was one of the most influential investors in the world, a man who turned businesses into gold with a single endorsement. The media adored them, often referring to them as the perfect power couple, a symbol of success and elegance. For Seraphina, the fairy tale had only become sweeter when she discovered she was pregnant. After years of focusing on building a life alongside Dorian, the news of a child felt like the missing piece to their story. But even perfection has its cracks. In the months leading up to her pregnancy, Seraphina had started to feel a shift. Dorian had always been a busy man, but lately he had been absent in a way that felt different. His late nights stretched into early mornings. His business trips became longer and more frequent. When he was home, he was distracted, glued to his phone, taking calls in hushed tones behind closed doors. Seraphina, ever the devoted wife, had told herself that he was under stress, that expanding an empire came with sacrifices, that once the baby arrived, things would return to normal. Then the package arrived. It was an unmarked envelope left on the concierge desk of their lavish penthouse. The staff, accustomed to handling fan mail and business documents for the Crests, hadn't thought much of it. But when Seraphina opened it, her world caved in. Inside were a series of photographs, high-resolution, undeniable proof. Dorian in a private resort in Greece holding another woman in ways that left no room for misinterpretation. They weren't just passing moments of affection. There were images of them laughing together over candle-lit dinners, whispering to each other on balconies, walking hand in hand along the shore. The woman was stunning, with dark, striking features, and an effortless elegance that suggested she was no stranger to luxury. Seraphina's hands trembled as she flipped through the photos. They weren't grainy paparazzi shots or gossip column speculation. Someone had gone through the trouble of capturing these moments with precision, of ensuring that every detail was clear enough to shatter her illusions completely. At the bottom of the stack was a simple note, typed in bold letters: "You deserve to know the truth." Her mind raced. Who had sent this? A scorned associate of Dorian's, a friend trying to protect her, or perhaps the other woman herself making her presence known? Seraphina stared at the evidence, feeling a storm rise within her. She had sacrificed so much for this life. She had defended Dorian against critics, stood by him through business scandals, and shaped her identity around being his wife. But the betrayal in these photographs wasn't just about the infidelity. It was about the deception, the double life he had led while she carried his child. The realization settled into her bones like ice. Dorian had never planned on stopping. He had been playing a role, stringing her along with false promises, while indulging in a life she had no part in. The media would have a field day if this got out. The investors who placed their faith in Crest Industries would question his integrity. And Dorian, he would do what he always did: lie, manipulate, control. But this time, Seraphina wasn't going to give him the chance. For the first time in their marriage, she felt something other than love or devotion toward him. She felt fury, and in that fury a plan began to form. Seraphina Vale had always been the kind of woman who handled things with grace, but grace had its limits. After seeing the photographs, She didn't cry, scream, or even confront Dorian immediately. She knew better than to give him the opportunity to twist the truth. Instead, she took a deep breath, steeled herself, and did what any intelligent woman would do. She gathered more information. Hiring a private investigator was easy when money wasn't an issue. Within days, she had a full report in her hands. And if the pictures had cracked her heart, the details inside shattered it completely. Dorian's affair wasn't a fling. It wasn't a lapse in judgment. It was a carefully maintained second life. The woman in the photos was Ilona Vance, a socialite with a reputation for attaching herself to powerful men. She had been with Dorian for over a year, and he had gone beyond the occasional rendezvous. He had bought her a villa in France, showered her with gifts worth millions, and taken her on trips under the guise of business meetings. As she read through the report, Seraphina felt her emotions shift from devastation to something sharper. He had lied so effortlessly, even as he held her at night, even as he kissed her forehead and spoke about their future. The betrayal wasn't just personal. It was a complete insult to everything she had given him. He had taken her love and turned it into a joke, treating her like an accessory while he built something real elsewhere. Seraphina knew what came next. Divorce was inevitable, but she refused to let it play out on his terms. If she confronted him in person, he would try to manipulate her, to convince her to stay with sweet words and empty promises. He might even make her doubt herself, the way he always did when he wanted to win. No, she wouldn't give him that satisfaction. She waited until he was in the middle of a high-profile business meeting, one that had been covered in financial news for weeks. Then, with a calmness that surprised even herself, she picked up her phone, dialed his number, and when he answered, she simply said, "I know everything. We're done." She could hear the stunned silence on the other end, the way his breath hitched slightly, but she didn't give him a chance to speak. She hung up, blocked his number, and sent a message to her lawyer to initiate the divorce proceedings immediately. The media went into a frenzy the moment the news broke. Headlines exploded overnight. Seraphina Vale walks away from Crest fortune? Billionaire divorce, betrayal, scandal, and a power move that no one saw coming. What shocked everyone the most wasn't that she was leaving Dorian, it was that she refused to take a single cent of his money. The world had expected a drawn-out legal battle, a bitter fight over assets. But Seraphina didn't want his fortune. She had built her life around him once, and she refused to let his wealth define her again. She packed her bags, liquidated her personal investments, and vanished from New York without a trace. Reporters camped outside their penthouse, eager for a statement. Speculation ran wild. Where had she gone? Why would a woman who had everything choose to disappear? Some assumed she was broken, too humiliated to face the public. Others believed she was hiding, plotting her next move. But Seraphina had already made her decision. She wasn't running away. She was starting over. And the world had no idea just how powerful she was about to become. Dubai was a city built on ambition, wealth, and reinvention, the perfect place for Seraphina Vale to write the next chapter of her life. While the world speculated about her whereabouts, she had already set her plans into motion. She didn't need Dorian's money to thrive. She had something far more valuable: knowledge. Years of standing by his side, studying his moves, understanding the game of power and finance. She had attended every business meeting, listened to every negotiation, and watched him manipulate markets and investors. Now, it was her turn to play. She arrived in the city with a clear vision and a strategy no one saw coming. Using undisclosed investments she had made during her marriage, she established SV Enterprises, a luxury brand that would redefine high-end fashion, beauty, and wellness. She was no longer just a former billionaire's wife. She was an entrepreneur, a force on her own terms. She didn't start small. She secured partnerships with elite designers, scouted the best minds in business, and ensured her brand had an immediate presence in the global market. Within months, SV Enterprises was not just another luxury brand, it was a symbol of power, exclusivity, and transformation. Women across the world admired her. Investors lined up to be part of her empire. Her name was no longer attached to Dorian's. It was a brand of its own, representing independence and strength. The media had a field day when she finally resurfaced. From betrayed wife to business mogul, Seraphina Vale's unstoppable rise. The very people who once pitied her now praised her brilliance. Talk show hosts dissected her comeback, business analysts called her strategy genius, and fashion. Magazines declared her the new queen of luxury. She had built something extraordinary, and unlike Dorian, she had done it without deception or corruption. While she focused on growing her empire, news of Dorian's troubles began to surface. His company, once an untouchable giant, was facing unexpected turbulence. A series of questionable financial dealings had drawn attention from regulators. Rumors swirled that investors were pulling out, fearing instability. Seraphina knew exactly what was happening. She had seen firsthand how recklessly he operated, how he cut corners and made risky bets, always assuming he was too powerful to fall. The irony was almost poetic. As her success skyrocketed, his world started to crumble. She never publicly commented on his downfall, never indulged in the satisfaction of watching his empire weaken. She didn't need to. The world was watching, and they knew. But the most shocking revelation was yet to come. Because while Seraphina was busy building a legacy, someone else had been working behind the scenes, gathering the evidence that would bring Dorian Crest to his knees. The scandal that was about to break would make his betrayal of her seem like a minor misstep, and this time there would be no escape for him. The cracks in Dorian Crest's empire had been forming for years, but now they were splitting wide open for the world to see. What had once been an untouchable dynasty of wealth and power was now drowning in allegations of fraud, corruption, and financial misconduct. The whispers had begun shortly after Seraphina left, growing louder with each passing month. Investors who once trusted him blindly began pulling out, and auditors started uncovering discrepancies too big to ignore. Then the investigation became official. Federal agencies launched a probe into Crest Industries, and what they found was worse than anyone had anticipated. Dorian had been laundering money through offshore accounts, inflating profits to manipulate stock prices, and securing high-profile deals through unethical tactics. He had built his fortune on a foundation of lies, and now it was all collapsing. The media latched onto the scandal immediately. News outlets ran back-to-back coverage, dissecting every detail of the investigation. His business associates distanced themselves. His board of directors held emergency meetings, and shareholders panicked as stock prices plummeted. Everything he had spent decades building was turning to dust before his eyes. But the ultimate betrayal didn't come from a rival or a government agency. It came from Ilona Vance, the woman he had risked everything for, the one he had lavished with wealth and affection, had secretly been working with law enforcement. As it turned out, Ilona had been gathering evidence against him for months, carefully documenting illegal transactions, forwarding key documents to authorities, and positioning herself as the star witness in what would become one of the biggest corporate scandals in years. The revelation was explosive. Overnight, Ilona went from being a mistress to a whistleblower. She testified against Dorian, providing authorities with insider knowledge of his dealings in exchange for legal protection. The media painted her as either a cunning opportunist or a strategic mastermind, but regardless of how the world saw her, one fact remained. She had ensured Dorian's downfall. When the arrest warrant was issued, Dorian was at his private estate in the Hamptons, desperately trying to salvage what little remained of his empire. But there was no salvaging this. FBI agents stormed the property, and the image of the once powerful billionaire being escorted out in handcuffs was splashed across every news outlet in the country. His bail was denied. The evidence against him was overwhelming. The trial would be lengthy, but the outcome was clear. Dorian Crest, once one of the most powerful men in the financial world, was facing decades behind bars. While the world watched his downfall, Seraphina remained silent. She didn't gloat, didn't give interviews, didn't release statements. She had already moved on, her focus solely on the empire she was building. But she knew the poetic justice of it all hadn't gone unnoticed. Dorian had betrayed her, humiliated her, and assumed she would fade into obscurity. Instead, she had risen higher than ever, while he had lost everything. And yet, Seraphina wasn't finished. There was still one final move left to make. While Dorian Crest sat in a prison cell, awaiting trial for financial crimes that would likely ensure he never regained his former power, Seraphina Vale was making her final and most strategic move yet. The world had watched her transform from a betrayed wife into a self-made business mogul, but what they didn't see coming was her next acquisition, Crest Industries itself. The company had been in free fall since Dorian's arrest. Shareholders were scrambling, desperate to salvage what remained, but confidence had been shattered. No investor wanted to be associated with a name that had become synonymous with fraud. The once mighty empire was on the verge of total collapse, but to Seraphina, it was an opportunity. Through carefully orchestrated deals, discreet negotiations, and strategic partnerships, she acquired the remaining shares of Crest Industries. It wasn't a hostile takeover. It was a calculated one, executed with the precision of someone who had been planning this for a long time. The moment the deal was finalized, she didn't waste time. She dissolved the old leadership, restructured the business, and rebranded it entirely. Crest Industries was no more. In its place stood Vale Global Enterprises, a company built on innovation, transparency, and integrity, everything Dorian's empire had lacked. She had erased his name from the business world, ensuring that his legacy wouldn't be one of power but of failure. The news sent shockwaves across financial markets. Analysts couldn't believe how flawlessly she had orchestrated the move. Journalists, who once speculated that she had been broken by Dorian's betrayal, now hailed her as one of the most brilliant businesswomen of her generation. She hadn't just moved on, she had rewritten the narrative entirely. Dorian, locked away with nothing left to his name, was forced to watch the woman he had underestimated become more powerful than he had ever imagined. His former empire was, now in her hands, transformed into something greater than anything he had built. He had lost his freedom, his fortune, and his reputation, while Seraphina had gained everything. She never visited him, never acknowledged his downfall, never uttered his name again. There was no need. She had never sought revenge. She had only sought freedom, and in the end, she had won. Her final victory wasn't just taking over his company, it was proving that she had never needed him at all.